Okay. Well, I'm here as a volunteer on behalf of the League of Women Voters, and I volunteer to become a speaker because after universal health care, gerrymandering is one of the topics that I'm particularly irate about. So let's see, I'm not getting this to move. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we see the screen.
See the picture, yes.
Oh, there we go. I'm getting him to move now. So fighting partisan gerrymandering has been a priority for the League of Women Voters in collaboration with other organizations like Common Cause and ACLU and faith organizations. They work very hard collecting signatures on petitions and helping educate voters to simply vote yes to achieve a redistricting reform. And what we want is fair maps. They did a remarkable job, these organizations. They were able to pass 2 amendments to the Ohio Constitution with all 88 Ohio counties approving them with a substantial majority. So they just did a wonderful job. Now, as I go further in this, I'm going to get into the weeds. I hope I don't confuse you. One thing to keep in mind is to pay attention about whether I'm talking about congressional races or state races, because one amendment was specifically to set up the process for congressional redistricting, and the other amendment was for state. So it gets a little wonky at times. So what is redistricting and why? So after every census, we make new maps for Ohio congressional districts as well as for the Ohio General Assembly. So I'm going to address both of those entities from the perspective of these 4 issues. And I'm going to begin with apportionment. This is a national issue. The U.S. House of Representatives has 435 members, distributed according to the population in the 50 states. Each state has at least 1 representative. The process of distributing the remaining 385 is called apportionment. Now, of course, the Senate does not have to do apportionment because there are a fixed number of senators from every state. It appears that Ohio has lost 1 congressional seat, so we will have 15 districts for the House of Representatives. How that works out in terms of the representation, in 1790, each member of Congress represented about 34,000 people. Today, each represents about 711,000. Now, moving to state issues, these are maps of the Ohio districts. We have a bicameral legislature. We have a House and we have a Senate. There's some states I think are unicameral, but we're bicameral. So the district lines are different because by our Constitution, we have a fixed number of senators, 33, and a fixed number of representatives, 99. So just what is redistricting? These little maps show you we are right now in the middle box. In the last 10 years, there have been population shifts and changes in population numbers in different districts, and so we're out of balance. And that's the purpose of using the census data to come up with a balanced number of approximately the same number of people in districts. They don't have to be precisely exact, but we're aiming for that bottom box. Here is a cute little representation of how redistricting can go wrong. Let's imagine that we're looking at a district that's populated only by cats and dogs. It has 30 dogs and 20 cats. So in the second box, the perfect representation would be such that since dogs are in the majority, you would have 3 dog districts and cats are in the minority, so you have 2 cat districts. But what happens is it matters who draws the districts and what, if any, are the rules. Those drawing the lines can do mischief. In this example, districts could be drawn to give perfect representation. That's the second box. Or they could crack the districts, and that means put a small number of cats in each district. And that gives us the third box, where there are 5 districts in which the dogs are always in the majority, and there are no districts in which the cats are in the majority. They can also pack the districts, and what that means is they can create token districts where they allow the cats to have a majority, but they make sure that it's not enough to make a difference in voting. So anyway, in the third box right here, we have 5 districts where always the dogs are in the majority. If the cats can get in a position where they draw the lines, they can do it such a way that even though they're in the minority, they create 3 districts where the cats are in the majority and 2 districts where the dogs are in the majority. Don't ask me any questions about this, but it just shows that it matters who draws the districts. And what has happened is by using these tactics, districts 3, 9, 11, and 13 are safe Democratic districts. The people who drew the lines were clearly Republicans, and they said, okay, we'll let some Democrats be elected, but not enough to really influence legislation. And I am having trouble here. Okay. Gerrymandering has been with us since the beginning of the Republic, but it only gets worse over time as mapping programs become stronger, faster, sophisticated. They're usually run by computerized algorithms that get data which they can rapidly manipulate on voters who are registered and what party affiliations they have. And that's how they can come up with these weird shaped districts. Gerrymandering leads to districts that are uncompetitive, and that leads to other troubles: voter suppression, voter apathy. It makes it so that the primaries are the real elections. They just weed out the candidates and select the one they want, and then they're sure to be elected. So the primaries become the major focus of voter activity. This is a map of Ohio's congressional district. And so you don't get confused. I'm now talking about the people we send to Congress, not the ones we send to the state. And this is what the districts look like now. And you can see each one has a different color. You can see what weird shapes they have. In 2011, the map makers guaranteed 12 Republican seats and 4 Democratic seats. And that's the way it's been at every congressional election. 12-4. Rigging these outcomes hurts all voters because when candidates and lawmakers know that they are assured to win their seat, they don't bother to listen carefully to the concerns of their citizens because they're pretty assured they're going to get reelected again. The good news is that it's time to make maps again, and we now have new reforms, which I'll describe, that will make the worst gerrymandering tactics impossible. What has happened as a result of the current gerrymandering is that the results are predictable. The box on the left represents the congressional elections in the last decade. About 55% of the votes were Republican, but they got 75% of the seats. In the next box, it looks at the same process happened in the state elections. 55% of the votes were Republican, and they got 64% of the seats. And that's going to continue until we change it. This is a map of the district most of us who are attending this belong to, District 15. The little box on the left is what the district looked like before the lines were redrawn 10 years ago. And you'll notice that the blue area is District 15, and it only has 2 full counties and a portion of Franklin County. Now, if you look at the bigger map, unfortunately, they changed the colors, and so now you need to look at the dark green. District 15 is here.
Oh, wow.
In order to ensure that it would be securely Republican, they had to split more communities and add voters for more conservatives. In total, District 15 is 933 square miles across. It involves 13 counties. 9 of the 10 counties added to this district leaned heavily Republican, therefore diluting the Democratic votes. If you've been in District 15 as long as I have, you can remember there was a time when Mary Jo Kilroy was our Democratic representative. She would win by slim margins, but she would win. After they redistricted, Steve Stivers has been safely elected, and he won't be elected again only because he is leaving Congress to lead the Chamber of Commerce. What's particularly bad about this is that this district now has bizarre and very different economic differences among the constituents. In Franklin County, college graduates outnumber those without high school diplomas 4-1. In Vinton County, down at the bottom into the east, more people lack a high school diploma than have college degrees. Similarly, the median household income in Franklin County is well above the state average, while the Appalachian counties have some of the highest levels of poverty in the state. It's impossible for a congressional member to adequately represent such disparate needs. There are new rules now for redistricting the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate maps. And again, keep in mind that the rules are different for the state redistricting map making, and different rules apply to the congressional ones. They're more rigorous for the state. So one of the things is to make sure that the lines that the counties represented are contiguous. They also—
Carol Hughes, excuse me. Carol Hughes, would you mute yourself, please?
Oh, didn't I? Okay. I thought you would do that to me.
I can't. I am unable to do that.
Am I mute now?
No.
No.
Are we okay?
Here.
At any rate, no plan shall be drawn to favor or disfavor a political party, and representational fairness should be guaranteed. The Constitution has defined a Ohio Redistricting Commission. There are 7 members, and these are the 7 members. 2 of them have to be Democrats. And to get approval of a 10-year map, 2 members of both major political parties have to vote to support the map. This provides a possibility of a minority veto on the process. The rules for the state legislature are tighter than the ones for congressional, which I've mentioned before. On the congressional district, the new rules do rein in the worst. They're not perfect, but there are some guardrails. And one of the most important things is transparency and public participation. These must be maintained despite the new census schedule. And that is one of the problems that we're facing, is that the census data is going to be late in arriving, which screws up the whole schedule. But one of the things they look at is avoiding splitting districts up. So of the 88 counties, at least 65 must be contained entirely within one district. Up to 18 counties may be split not more than once into 2 districts, and up to 5 counties may be split not more than twice into 3 districts. So we won't be able to do this anymore. As you see in this, Mercer County, which is a fairly small one, has 3 different counties in the district. And the one on the right, that pink gargoyle that you see is, I think, which is that? That's Summit County. So if you happen to live in Summit County, you could be put in any one of 4 different districts, depending on where you live. And you might live in a situation, it would be quite common for you to be in one district and your neighbor across the street to be in a different one. The counties with the highest populations have enough population to have a district complete in each county. There's one exception, and that's Franklin County. Columbus must be split because its population is larger than the size of the number of people that can be assigned to a district. So we have a problem. Ohio was supposed to get the census data in March. And as many of you know, particularly if you were involved in being a census volunteer, or not volunteer, but a census worker, they had trouble because of the pandemic getting all the data together. And so instead of releasing it in March, those numbers won't arrive until August, at which point Ohio University will be involved to prepare the data. But that doesn't mean you couldn't start the planning process before that. I think the next slide will show you the timeline according to the Constitution. You see that a lot of deadlines have to be met according to our Constitution by the end of September. And then the final stage everything has to be completed, including approval of 60% of the members of the General Assembly and 1/3 of the Democratic members by November 30th. And that's where we're running into difficulty. So what do we do about the deadlines? The census data, as I said before, will arrive after some of these, will not arrive until August. And so we're not going to be able to meet some of these deadlines. The Ohio Secretary of State and Attorney General recently filed a suit to compel the Census Bureau to deliver data to Ohio in time to meet our deadlines, but that's not going to happen. What we can do is, though, as individual citizens, we can take action. You can get in touch with Governor DeWine, and I have put a lot of links into the chat box. And I urge, if you want to participate in this process, copy those links and put them in a document you can save and refer to later, because just putting in the PowerPoint is not going to be helpful to you. You can urge Governor DeWine to convene the Redistricting Commission. There's no reason why they couldn't start meeting and planning strategies of how to meet these impossible deadlines and how to get the thing done in spite of the delays. You can get in touch with map makers and legislators to get to work on redistricting while we wait for the census data. You can write letters to the editor, and you can send postcards to the redistricting committee. I happen to get about 200 cards and impressed into service my friends and family to send cards to the individual members of the Redistricting Commission. And I have some left over. If you'd like to get in touch with me, I'll deliver them to you. So the issues to address is to demand no last minute changes to the redistricting rules. You may have read in the paper that the Ohio General Assembly has been working on a state budget, and it's gone from 500 pages to 700 pages and now 1,000 pages. I don't know how many it is today, but one of the things they stuck into it was an amendment which addresses the possibility of redistricting lawsuits and giving priority to the Ohio Speaker and the Senate President, both of whom are Republicans. So it's clearly not a bipartisan, it does not honor the bipartisan nature of the redistricting process. So members of the conference committee need to hear that you oppose that amendment about redistricting the lawsuits. So I believe that this is my last slide. I have a URL in here about how to get involved, but it's in the chat box. And again, I urge you to send postcards to the commission members. I have a few dozen available, and they come with a script of talking points that you can choose, and it has the names and addresses of all of the 7 redistricting members. The other thing you can do is the public is encouraged to make its own maps. Now, if you're a geek, you can probably do that. If you're not a geek, you very likely have a child or a grandchild who is. And I think this would be a wonderful way, a fun way for them to get involved in a civics project, is ask them to draw maps. So that's all I have to say. And if I've got you thoroughly confused, I'll see if I can unconfuse you. You can unmute now.
Alice, I don't see the links in the chat box.
Yes, it looks vacant, Alice, except for your postcard request.
Well, maybe you need to scroll. I had put a whole bunch in there.
If you stuck it in before people joined, they won't be able to scroll back that far.
Well, let me work on getting them in there. How did that happen?
If you put it in before someone arrives.
Really? I did not know that. Okay. So I'm gonna, maybe you can talk among yourselves while I put those links into the chat box right now.
See, the Zoom rules were written by Republicans.
I believe it. Okay, I'll start. I only have about 4 or 5 to put in, so go ahead and start your discussion. I'll be back with you.
Okay, well, if anybody has anything to say, unmute yourself and say it.
I guess, once we get the links and all from Alice, it's pretty cut and dried. What we need to do is we need to start taking some actions, contacting people, becoming better informed. So there we go.
There's
I think maybe just mentioning that don't let the slow up of the census data freeze you into inactivity. Do something anyway. You can do a little something.
How many of you have personally lobbied or written letters to legislators? Any of you have done that? Oh, that sounds good.
Yes,
Um,
Arlene has.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a quick way to find out, to send an email to your representative. It's different for senators. But if you know the district you're in, it would be in small caps, small cap letters, REP, Rep 21, if you're in District 21, at ohio.house.gov. The formula for the senators is a little different, but that's the one for the representatives.
And if you don't know exactly who your representative or your district, you can go to senate.ohio.gov or house.ohio.gov. And they have a real easy search engine. You just type in your address and it'll pop up your representative or senator, and you click on the link there and it takes you right to their own personal websites with a contact function in it.
Would you repeat that?
Yeah, it's senate.ohio.gov and house.ohio.gov.
Thank you.
So I think I have the stuff on postcards in here and map making and
Yes.
and as I say, I have about 45 postcards with instructions so that if you want to get in touch with me and I can give them to you.
So the most urgent action, I suppose, is around the budget, right? And the attempt to allow the
president and the speaker.
To intervene in lawsuits about maps.
Yeah, that seemed to be against the spirit of the constitutional amendments. And I don't know if that stayed in there. I sent an email to someone at the League of Women Voters to see if they knew where that amendment stood, if it was still in there. And I haven't gotten a reply yet, so I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
On Monday, I called I think I called Dolan and Olslager's offices to find out. Olslager is in charge of the conference committee.
Yes, that's an important committee. Yes.
Yeah. And there are 6 members of the conference committee. The material I got didn't list them all, but I now have them. And then, of course, the Speaker and the President of the Senate. They were going to have a conference committee. They had not adopted any amendment. If the guy, you never know whether the aide understands what's going on, but according to what they told me is they have not adopted any amendments. They talked about them. But what they have is they have at the Legislative Budget Office, there, and I didn't look it up, but there is a document that compares the Senate and House version. And they will use that as the basis for drafting up an amendment. They're going to use the Senate version of the bill as the basis for the conference committee report. And they will draw up an amendment to take things out of the Senate bill and put things from the House in there as part of the compromise and whatever else they want to do. Because there's no limit they can add. They can add any kind of provision at that point. But they didn't seem to think that committee was going to come to a conclusion over the next couple of weeks.
Well, it's not important that they come to a conclusion. It's important that they start meeting and address the, the roadblocks that are currently in the way and see if they can come up with some they need to understand the process. They can start talking about the process already, even if deadlines can't be met.
I believe Fred's talking about the budget process right now, right?
I'm talking about the budget process, and the provision that apparently is in one of the 2 versions. I believe it's the Senate version, which says that the Speaker and the President of the Senate can intervene in the case and do it as a public official, and therefore can tap the state funds to pay for their lawyers' fees, appoint their lawyers, get the experts, and all that kind of stuff. I am presuming, although this was not said to me, that by giving them that right, it precludes other people from intervening. Or at least intervening with the financial wherewithal to have a meaningful intervention.
But my understanding is that in general, that the intervention would be the Attorney General would defend against such lawsuits. But in this case, how the legislative GOP could do, fund a private intervention, legal intervention.
The agency is responsible for defending the commission.
Oh,
the state agency, if he does what he's supposed to do. And this allows a separate intervention. That's the way I was, without having read anything. That's my understanding of it.
Mine too.
I also thought that under the Ohio Constitution, budget bills were not, it wasn't allowed to put in non-budgetary items. And
yes,
that seems to have gone by the wayside over the past 10 years.
Well, the lame excuse for that was that anything that affects the functioning of the General Assembly is a budgetary issue. Don't. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that that's how.
Another friend of mine told me that the subject of every bill was money, therefore it applies.
Right.